Welcome to Prepared Leader from Crisis to Confidence, the podcast for leaders who know that resilience isn't something you plan for, it's something you practice. I'm Helen Lipscombe, and in every episode, we explore the human side of high stakes leadership, the real habits, hard lessons, and surprising strengths that prepare you to lead through change, not just survive it. I've been really looking forward to today's conversation because it's something that is being discussed in every avenue that I work in. How organizations are using AI, how organizations are setting themselves up well to use AI. It's a very real question. How do you build your understanding of AI and adopt AI in a way that helps you to stay competitive, but also make sure you're keeping your organizations and the data that you use and have safe? Most organizations aren't failing at AI because the technology doesn't work, but they are actually failing because they haven't thought about how they want to use it. They haven't built the right foundations and they aren't able to adopt it with confidence. And that's where my 4A resilience framework comes in. It's a practical model for building resilience, not as an emergency response, but as an organizational infrastructure. And today, I'm going to test this with one of the most significant business challenges that we are now seeing. My guest is Gary Salters, who is the founder of Go to Succeed Business Coaching, a growth strategist who spent over 20 years helping business owners build high-performing, scalable organizations. Gary knows what it takes to lead change from inside out, and he's here to bring the business growth lens to this conversation. Gary, thank you for joining us on the Prepared Leader today. We're really excited that you're here for this really interesting conversation.
Hello. Thank you for having me. Very excited to be here. Yes.
Fantastic. This is a conversation that you and I have had a number
Yep.
of times. But what I wanted to do today was, as I've said in the introduction, really help to frame this in a way that I think will support organizations that are trying to grapple with AI and give them a mechanism and a decision-making approach that maybe will get them to think about how they can make it work for them. So let's start off first with thinking about what is the 4A resilience framework? What is it that we're actually going to use this for today? The first A within that framework is anchor. And that is around making it clear for organizations what they are focused on, what's their purpose, their values, what is like the essence of the organization is what anchor is about. And you need to be really clear on that because that helps you to understand how you're going to manage risk, what level of risk you will accept, and to think about how risk will impact your organizations. So for me, this is the reason why we start with anchor in the 4A framework, because it's very much the foundation. You need to understand clearly the why of the organization. What is it we are here to deliver? And what do we need to be able to continue to do? But also, what is that kind of core of who we are as an organization? What is it we want to be known as? And how do we want to be seen by our customers, by our stakeholders, by our clients? If we start there with that kind of element of, again, the purpose of the organization, when you're working with business owners and having these conversations about AI adoption, do you think that's something that they're clear about? Have they thought about how AI maybe works with their purpose? Do you think they've got some clarity about where AI could be valuable to them, knowing what they're trying to deliver?
Really great question. When we start working with a business, we've got our framework, which you know ourselves, which is believe it, plan it, build it, sell it. And believe it, like anchor, is all about your why. So why do we do what we do and why does someone want it? And I think that is really, really important. And it's fundamental to kind of people thinking about that themselves. And I think the danger, like you talk about where we're at the minute, is that people just jump to AI and ask all of these questions. But it's fundamentally, first of all, you've got to think about, okay, for believe it for us is why do you do what you do and why does someone want it? And I think, you know, that's really, really important. Why are we doing what we do as an organization? And then using AI, obviously, to support you, but not actually using AI to kind of build that for you. And I think my view really is in all these things that you now see on TikTok, on Facebook, on Instagram, all of these things people are posting about Claude, about ChatGPT, about all of these things, about telling you to use these prompts, to think about, to connect with these people, to do these things. But fundamentally, you've got to really think about, why do we do what we do as an organization? And if you've been around before AI, you've got to kind of think about those fundamentals before we start jumping on AI to kind of go, okay, we can use it as a support tool, but fundamentally as a business, why do we do what we do? Why does someone want it? Because that is where you will get growth. Yeah. So, and that is really, really, really important to kind of be thinking about that yourself with your teams, or if you're an owner, just a founder on your own, a solopreneur, is why am I doing what I do and where do I want to go? And I think that has to come from you. That can't come from AI, from, language learning models, because they just kind of spew out lots of things that they've been given from everyone that they're learning over the last 5 years. And I think we're in danger of kind of growing businesses if we're just doing that, where we all become the same and we all become kind of anonymous.
Hmm.
And then we rely on it ourselves, or we don't have that ability to think. So, if we get to somewhere with the business, we come with a challenge, then how do we overcome that? Because AI is going to be giving everyone maybe the same answers. So, how do we think for ourselves? And I think it's really, really important. I think AI, yes, is super important, but also I think thinking for yourself is
Mm.
also is the most important thing about
Yeah.
who you are as a business, where are we going? What are those risks? You've got to think about that, because, AI will only give you the things that it knows and things it's learned from other people and what it's been fed with. And also it can lead you down a massive rabbit hole of all of these risks or whatever that
Yes.
can
Yeah.
actually distract you from putting risk things into your business, and also about growing your business, which is a risk. If you don't grow, you could lose your business, right?
So it sounds like in some ways you're seeing quite a lot of leaders almost rush into this,
Yeah.
the world of AI, without spending time being clear on the why, without being, I guess, challenging themselves to, where does AI help me? Where does AI fit into what I'm doing? Which comes back to, again, being really clear on, what is it do I do? Why do I do it? Why do I set up a business? Are you finding that are you having conversations really that almost bring people back to, maybe they've done a lot of work right now, maybe they're thinking about what they're doing, but actually they're not clear on their purpose. They've not spent time on that anchor piece.
Yes, I do. And I think more and more now, because as you know, I do a lot of networking. I talk to a lot of people all the time. All the networking I do, probably do 15 networking events a month. But more and more when I'm talking about people, and I think anywhere you go in the world, everybody's talking about AI, and they say, oh, got this brilliant idea. And my fundamental question I ask everyone, so what is that going to achieve for your business, and why are you doing it? And sometimes people are like a blank because they haven't really thought about it. It's like, oh, I've been given this thing, let's go running after it. And I think it is really important to think about, what is it we want to achieve? And then how can we use that for some ideas, for using more ideas to able to grow the business, to asking that. So actually having the roadmap of where you want to go,
Yes.
thinking, right, this is what I want to do, and this is what we need to do to help a business. So, like for us, Go Succeed, our mission has always been to help small businesses, founders, leaders grow businesses, have businesses that they love, yeah,
Mhm.
and do things that they really enjoy, yeah, and feel fulfillment from what they're doing in their business. So that is what it's fundamentally about. And then that's why we start with Believe It. So why have you started what you do? Whether you're a website company, why are you doing what you do? When we work with people like that, for instance, they just love the coding. They love, building websites. They love being able to give something really nice and shiny. Right.
Yeah.
So that's why they do what they do. And then it's framing it around, well, okay, so what is the value piece that you give to that person? So what is that? But we're seeing lots of, and I think it's really kind of, there's lots of risks in there in terms of just going to that website world, where now, you see all of these adverts where you can build websites with AI, and you've got loads of different people coming into it and doing all of these things. And it's, how do we add that value? And I think we need to be really careful in the world that we live in, that we kind of do anchor ourselves of,
Mhm.
right, what are we doing and what is the value that we are giving?
Yeah.
Because that is why, people will always buy from people.
And it's also that distinguishing factor back to, you know, that the risk of all of this is, again, if you use AI to build a website, it will build a website that looks like every other website that's
Yeah.
ever existed. Or
Mhm.
it will build a strategy that looks like every other strategy that ever existed. The anchor, the why, that value that we all bring as individuals to organizations is us. It's
Mhm.
the bit that we bring, which is the passion. It's the reason behind that. And I think that again is that element that has to come, you have to come back to that, almost a challenge. Whilst AI can help you to do some of the, you know, can help speed up some of that thinking, there still has to be that human input. There still has to be the bring it back to the
Yeah.
anchor point. Why are
Yeah.
we doing this? Why did I bother setting up a business? It's because I wanted it. For me, similar to, you know, your mission's very clear. My mission, our mission at Resilience Continuity, is about helping organizations to continue to operate no matter what disruptions they're faced with. Again, it's a very clear thing that we're trying to work to, and we recognize that there's lots of reasons why that might not work. But if
Mhm.
you come back to being clear on the what is it we want to deliver, that should be your starting point for all of these conversations and for the understanding of how risk can be applied to your organization.
Yeah. And I think it's really important because if you have to start with that, start with the why, and then what are we trying to achieve, and then you can map out the risks, which is
Yeah.
really important. So the risks of, you know, where will I get money? Will I grow? What are the risks involved to everything that we do, the systems that we use to deliver our programs, whatever it is, then it all comes fundamentally down to, first of all, what are we trying to achieve? What are we trying to deliver? And then it's kind of going, right, okay, so what are the risks involved with all of that? And that is super, super important. Rather than reverse engineering it by going, okay, hello, Claude, tell me this is what, you know, I want to build a business, give me a business that's working, you know,
Yeah.
and fundamentally people won't enjoy that.
Well, this is again, it will feel inauthentic at the end of the day, right? Because it'll feel like it's been created, and again, that's, you know, that is a big part of the conversation right now. Is it's becoming more obvious where things are being created in that way,
Mhm.
because we are losing some of the humanity behind,
Yeah.
you know, what we're talking about. That is the reality of this. It's a computer that is writing things for you. Yes, it's got lots of learning behind it. It's got lots of models it's applying, but at the end of the day, it is not humans that are writing this. And therefore, it doesn't sound like humans are writing this information. And that's the bit that you're going to lose.
I think it's really important. You know, I heard that there's that story. I think people and, you know, new people coming into your business with new ideas and different ideas aren't things that are just being fed through large language models because, you know, effectively all it is just learning. It's not actually, doesn't actually have a brain. It's just using data that it has, right? So it's only data that's out there that it can use, right? So actually humans, we can think about things that maybe no one has ever thought about before. That
Yeah,
is how, you know, advancements come around. That is how
yeah,
you move forward with everything. And I
yeah.
suppose the story that I love to remember is one that Rory Sutherland talks about, where there's a council up north, and you know they were spending tens of thousands of pounds on. This is a really easy little story. They're spending tens of thousands of pounds on removing fly posters. So people posting like shows and circuses and all those
Yeah.
types of things and then gigs and stuff. And so they're having all of this and they were spending thousands of pounds of, you know, councils going out, people taking them down, all of that. And they're like, how do we tackle this? How do we tackle this? And then it was just one of the junior members of the team come in one Monday morning and said, I know how we can tackle it for a fraction of the cost. And they were like,
Mm.
how can we? We've been spending like tens of thousands on it. And he said, if you go and order me cancelled stickers, we'll go and put cancelled around all of the things. So what happened was, and it's just a genius of someone thinking outside the box. What happened was they went around and put up all these cancelled on the fly posters. Guess what happened? People then started flooding these companies with, oh, is this event cancelled, right?
Yep.
So guess what, you know, so then it kind of, right? No, with
It didn't
AI,
can,
never
yeah.
even giving you that number,
No,
right?
no, AI would never come
And
up with
like,
that.
and
It would just, yeah, it would just come up
it's
with
just this,
different ways of advertising, wouldn't it? That's what it would push, rather than the how do we get rid of this problem?
yeah. So that was how they got rid of the problem. And that was just someone thinking outside the box, someone using their kind of, you know, going and doing that. And obviously, if
Yeah,
AI had been fed with that somewhere else, yes, it may have given you that answer, but potentially
sure.
not,
No,
because, you know, and that's kind of the fundamental thing is about thinking about having your teams, having your people, because that's all risk, right? So how are we getting there? The risk is that your competitors will do something better. Your competitors will take your market share. So, how do we do things better?
Yes. Yeah. I think that really neatly moves us on to the second A in our framework, which is all around aligning. And for me, aligning is, again, about agreeing positions. So from a leadership perspective, it's deciding what are we going to do. And again, in this case, particularly, it's about saying, how do we think we want to use AI in our organizations? What are the expectations we're going to set of our teams? And then communicating that, sharing that, so that people in your organization know what's expected of them, and that your processes and your culture then supports or challenges that as necessary. And again, it's not about just saying we're all going to adopt AI and that's the way that's how we're going to use that, because that it certainly isn't a model that I'm seeing anyone work with. But that, again, back to what we were just discussing, isn't going to help organizations thrive. It's not going to help organizations grow. But there is an element of recognizing that AI is something that exists, and that if people are going to use it. So as leaders of organizations, you need to be thinking about, how do you want AI to show up in your organization? What are you expecting people to do? And how are you seeing that come across? How are you seeing organizations start to think about those elements? And have you started to see, again, clear messages from leaders around what's acceptable use of AI, what policies and what strategies they're putting in place, but also the controls maybe they're putting in place? Again, back to, this is a risk for your organization.
Yeah, I think more and more probably people are starting to look at the risk side, but I still don't think people have actual policies in place for teams or for whatever. And there's that kind of market of businesses where there's a lot of businesses who probably don't use AI, right? So they're not thinking about AI and not thinking about it. And the risk to those businesses are those people within their organizations are using AI and giving AI information and, maybe secrets or whatever about their business and just putting it in there and not realizing the risks within that, right? So sharing information. So if you don't have an AI policy, it's kind of like, well, what are people doing? Because humans naturally will think, well, actually, we're all human. You go, right, well, what's the easy way around that? My boss has asked me to do this. There is no AI policy. I'm going to go and do this and get, that answer, right? I'm not going to think about it for myself. And that comes back to the things where, what is it we're going to do? So for instance, if there's no AI policy in place and someone says, well, actually, this competitor is taking our market share, what do we do? People may just go and look at AI, right? Look and go, well, what is it we do? But one of the things that I always say about things like that is where you've got competitors, you've got to get your team together and get people thinking about it and look at the things like, right, what does my competitor, this is what they do well, but what do they not do well? And let's double down on that and have a discussion around it. And then the big thing is use AI to kind of, think about those ideas to kind of, bring more into it. So you can use it as a tool to kind of be using it for more ideas, but actually the real thinking needs to come from the people, and AI is just a support tool. AI isn't the driven thinker of giving you those answers. And I think that's important. So I think that there's two things really important with the risk. The main risk is obviously having an AI policy, right? So people know how to use AI and having some sort of system that you use that's agreed within the organization that everybody uses. So they're not using their own personal chat GPT or any of that. So having that. And then secondly, saying that actually as a business, this is how we do things. We come together, we have set, team things, whether it's weekly, monthly, whatever it is, where we come together to share ideas in that place. And then we go away and we can use, AI and these tools to kind of support us and give us more ideas. But fundamentally, you have to set those rules in place. Otherwise, everyone's just going to be chatting with AI. And if you've got a big team, people can have thousands of ideas and you can get lost in that, right?
Well, that's the big risk as well, because, AI is very good at taking lots of ideas and building on that. So you're right. If there isn't a systematic way that this is being managed within the organization, and I really like that the elements you were talking about there around the keeping the kind of attitudes and behavioral elements of building a good culture of let's
Yeah.
keep talking to each other, let's keep challenging us. Let's again think about how AI can add value, but let's not make that be the way we run our business. Let's and again agree how you're going to use it through policies and approaches set from leadership down, but that then means you're not getting lots of your data shared externally that you don't want.
Yeah.
And it's almost like that targeted approach to using AI, using it where it can add value, using it maybe where it can deal with some of the more admin tasks, but not getting it to write your emails necessarily, because that's not a helpful use of it. But thinking about how, because the positives of AI is it can help speed up activities. It can help with some of those more, I don't want to say mundane isn't quite the right phrase, but I can't think of a different word right now. But it's those elements that it can help, and that's where it is adding value to organization. But it isn't about, it's not going to be the challenge or thought partner that organizations or individuals and organizations need, because it can't do that. And it's never going to be able to it will only reflect what it's hearing, whether it's hearing that from you or hearing it from the world as a whole. It's not, again, going to come up with independent thought, because that's not what they're designed to do.
It's how you prompt it. And that's why I think working with teams is really important. Sitting down with your team, sitting down with your people, whether it's one, two people in the business, or if you're a solopreneur, go out there, get yourself, work with a mentor, get yourself a business coach, whatever it is, so you can have those conversations, because those are the ones that are important, because people will think about things that only an AI model might give you that, but it depends on how you lead it and the questions you ask. Whereas, us as humans can think about things, well, actually, have we thought about that? And some of the best ideas for some of the biggest companies come from someone saying, actually, have you thought about that? No one's ever thought about that. Like that example I gave, no one's thought about going and putting cancelled stickers on a thing, right? So, and I know that's a really simple one, but these types of things, no one's really thought about that. It's kind of like having that thinking about, oh, actually, so when I work in the business with Johnny, that's the big thing. My husband, business partner, when we talk about it, they often ask me questions and I just go away and I'm driving along and I think about things. Actually, we should do that. Actually. And then you can use AI for things like that. I think, well, how could we implement that? Right. So we've got this idea, how.
We've got the idea. Yeah.
Right. It is about the idea, about creating those kind of structures. And it's really important because also, we need to, I think the big thing is this, right? That we're of this kind of, age where we've kind of came through a lot of technology, right? So for me, I'm in my 40s, I came through the mobile phones, came through the internet, all of these things that have kind of supported us. But we've got to think about the kids that are being born today, like my nieces and nephews, that, what will happen to the world if they don't critically think for themselves, if they're just using AI, right? What will happen to the world? Because it will kind of stop, because if you really think about it, and this is kind of really deep, but if you really think about it, AI is being fed by everything that we know about the world, humans, right? So that's where it's learning. So it's kind of genius that these companies have been set up and they're training their technology on human thinking. We're giving it to it for free, right? Okay, when you think about it like that. Now, if we stop thinking and people start using it, there is a limitation to it, right? Because, it will just keep spurging the same thing, because the best ideas come from, when people, the light bulb or whatever it is, electricity, those came from people, right? We didn't have AI. And to keep moving forward, I think we need to use it as a tool, but we also need to kind of have that importance with children, with people that we bring into our business, everyone that comes into the business, whether it's an apprentice or whatever, and have those people to have that critical thinking for themselves and teaching them that, not just relying on AI. I think it's a brilliant tool. I'm not saying not to use AI. I think it's important that we need to use it and, but use it in the right way. That is kind of what we're really passionate about. It's not about kind of having just going in there and just using AI to run your business. And I think there is a lot of people just kind of doing that, which is a bit scary, really.
That's true. And I think we've naturally moved on to the next A within the framework, which is around activate. And this is where, again, resilience from the approach that I'm thinking about becomes much more real. And it's, again, moving from the documents that you create to the behaviors, the systems, the habits that people actually follow. And I think you just started to talk about some of the elements that I wanted to touch on here, which is around that kind of, and we've touched on some of this already, but it's what are those guardrails that organizations should be thinking about as they're starting to implement AI? Because it does appear that without clear structures and without clear approaches to this, and without setting those expectations around the right behaviors, how AI should be used, that organizations or individuals and organizations are going to be very chaotic in how they use AI. It's not going to be structured. It will potentially damage future critical thinking. It will mean we don't have as many of those light bulb moments because we become a little bit, and it was like going to the Wall-E kind of version of the world, if you remember that.
Yeah.
Cartoon from a few years ago. It was like,
Yeah.
we're just, someone else is running this world and we're just we're just eating, basically. And that's a terrifying idea that's where humanity could get to if organizations or if individuals aren't starting to think about being structured around the use of AI. Is there anything you've seen that's working well, or any advice that you're giving to organizations you're working with around that?
I think there's two big elements to that. So obviously the first element is, like you said, is about the critical thinking, is about educating your team about what you're using AI for, what you're giving it. And as a support tool, like we said, I think that's really important that we still have that critical thinking. We think about who we are as a business, what we're trying to achieve, and the things that we want to do. And having those light bulb moments, like you just talked about, is really, really important. I think that is super important. The other element to it is that people, I think, have gone into this world of AI and no one I think the rule book, talking about risk and resilience, the rule book's kind of been thrown out the window, which is also quite scary to me, where people are just like, yeah, we've got Claude, we've got this. And, I met someone that was like, yeah, Claude's just sorted out all my data in my Excel spreadsheets. And I was like, oh, wow, okay, well, do you have an enterprise level agreement, DPA agreement? And they're like, no, but I'm paying for it. And what people don't understand is that having a paid Claude or a paid ChatGPT doesn't give you the guardrails to protect your data and your business. And, those models can train on your stuff for 5 years. There is things that you can do. Obviously, you can choose not to be sharing it for, training their models and all of that. You can turn that on within your chat. But again, that is still not fully DPA. And I think it's having those kind of conversations as well about what are you sharing with AI, well, there's an idea. And it's like that whole thing, like you said, about emails. It's like, are people using, critical thinking about emails? Or now someone emails me and then I'm just going, oh my goodness, I'm going to reply to that. And just giving that email to chat and replying. Are we moving through a world where it's just kind of like you email me and you go, I'm going to email Gary and ask that Gary a question. I want to ask Gary a question. You go in chat or Claude, right? I want to ask Gary this question. Boom, boom.
Yeah.
And now think about this, right? This is crazy, right? And you sent me that email and I see that email. I go, okay, Claude, can you answer that email for me, right? There is no one actually thinking about the answer. And I know that seems a bit mad, but I think some of that is happening now, right? And that is the big risk is, again, no one's thinking about things and thinking about actually what is it we're trying to achieve? What is the answer? I'm not thinking about that because I think we've moved to this world of, with everything, with social media, all of this, where everything is instant and we just need to do it, right? So that there's that problem. The second problem is giving all of your personal data and things like, can you reply to Helen or whatever? And it's fine to use it. And I think if you are using it, those guardrails are, I've done this, and kind of doing the email and thinking, actually, can you tidy it up for me a bit?
Yeah.
But the key important thing is, if you're writing a proposal or something for a business where we teach people to grow and you're like, okay, I want to send this email. This is what I want to do. This is what I'm offering. This is what I've suggested. When you give that to Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini, or any AI model, is about kind of anonymizing it, right? So if I was writing an email to you, it's not going, write an email to Helen, resilience continuity. I would be saying, write an email to a potential client who works in the resilience space, right? These are some of the things I want to do, right? So you're anonymizing it. We're not giving it data. We're not giving it things to learn on. So just little steps in training your team on that. But I think that bit's important, but then also getting them to say, right, before you do that, you need to kind of be thinking about the body of the email. You need to read that email. You need to be thinking about it. Yes, you can use it. These are the tools. So go into it with kind of the outline of what you're wanting to say, the things that you think should happen, and then get it to structure it for you in an anonymized way.
And I think the email thing is an interesting one, because I do think that you're seeing that more with Copilot as well, because obviously that's become part and parcel of a lot of organizations' office environments. It's just there. It's just a quick flick and it rewrites an email for you. But to that point, it's fine to some extent to use it like that. But there is going to be that element of all of these emails flying back and forth that are written by AI, and no one's actually checking the content. No one's checking if we are asking the right questions or getting the right answers, because there's not that review process. It's just an ongoing. I mean, it's sort of it's almost the reason behind emails in some cases as well. But it becomes that perpetual cycle of, oh yeah, like you say, I'm just going to send Gary an email. Can you write this for me? Rather than, what am I trying to achieve here? Again, to me, it comes back to the purpose piece again. Why are you doing this? What's the purpose behind this? What's the anchor point that you're activating against? And activation is about turning that intention into action. It isn't necessarily about just, again, making this simple and quick. It's about building the appropriate behaviors, building the appropriate processes and systems. That means it can be continued and it becomes part of how you do things, which isn't easy. There isn't an easy way of doing that. So there isn't an easy fix for that, which AI can help with, which I think is where some organizations are struggling. But I do think it's also really important, the point you made around the sort of data protection angle, because I think that is a big risk around this that I think people aren't clear about. I don't think people are thinking about what data they're sharing.
Yeah.
And again, when organizations are starting to build their approach to using AI, that needs to be an important thing that they're setting up. What are the controls that you've got around how that data is used? What information is actually shared with the AI? Is it all anonymized? Are you allowing your team members to share sensitive information because you haven't talked about it, because you haven't clearly set the expectations, which I think is a real risk.
Yeah. And there's lots of risks, that are out there, but I think it is about just setting those in place is really, really important, so that your team know that And listen, look, it's an exciting thing, right? It's like mobile phones, it's like whatever, the internet is a really exciting thing, and it's going to be part of our lives. But I think we've just got to think about how we use it is the most important bit, and kind of people jump in. And it has been an explosion if you think about it just in the last 2 years, Chat GPT, we weren't using it 2 years ago, right? That's mad, right? And I remember going on a learning thing with a company in Brighton about it, and kind of really not knowing anything about chat, didn't know any of that. And me and Johnny went on a learning thing. We're like, oh, wow, this is what it can do. It can write in your tone of voice. It can do all of this. And it was like kind of being that steep learning curve. But we've kind of always been, actually, we need to kind of just keep it at arm's length. I suppose from the worlds that I come from, I'm a very risk averse person, right? So I've come from the franchising world. I've also worked in the banking world. So GDPR for me is kind of like, I'm always risk averse. I'm always with those things. I like double down on that, which is really, really, really kind of, important to kind of do those things and make sure it's there in place. But it is an explosion, and I just think it's going to get more and more, but we need to be putting those guardrails in place. And we also need to be just telling people, listen, think for yourself, right? Because there is a danger in just thinking, like we just said, of like people just firing emails back and forth to each other that no one's actually written. Yeah. How mad is that?
Oh, read. And it's just a continuous loop. It is a continuous loop. Absolutely.
Stuck in the matrix.
We're always in the matrix. But I think that again brings us very neatly onto the fourth A, which is around adapt. And this is the heart of what makes organization resilient. It's about bouncing back, not about necessarily just recovering. And it's about learning, evolving, and growing. And as you've just said, AI is one of those elements, and I've lived through that same element of change throughout my life. The world is a very different place to the world I was born into, and sometimes when you do sit there and think about it, it's crazy. But it's also changing so much more rapidly now. And what we know as AI, chat was the first one. It came in a couple of years ago. It's now There's now a prolific number of different AI solutions out there. And what we are dealing with right now will not be the same in 12 months' time. There will be new tools, there will be new risks, and there may be more regulation around this. So I guess, what would be your thoughts around the right kind of adaptive mindset that leaders should be starting to think about so that they are prepared for this change, prepared for this continual change? And I guess it's not, again, we're not just talking about this from an AI lens, but we're using AI as a way of explaining this process. What is it that leaders should be thinking about, and how should they be building in the right feedback loops in their organization so they're continually learning whether AI is helping them, whether it's harming them, and what they should be doing to adjust their approach to it?
Yeah, I think really the big thing to adapt is always being out there thinking about, right, so where is this business going? It's having a vision of where are we going and how are we going to get there. That is kind of the really important thing. And, we don't know where we'll be in 12 months' time with AI, but it's thinking about where are we now, how are we using those tools and how do we adapt. And I think putting, like we've talked a lot about, is about putting those guardrails in place to begin with so people know where we're at, and kind of always kind of updating that and learning about the things that are changing within AI and the things that can help you, and bringing those in to help you. Because systems do help you. That's what helps you grow, right? So I think no matter what you're doing in your business, you need to think of everything as a system, as what we talk about and Go Succeed. We have a system for this, we have a system for this, and training all your people on it. So we have a system, what if AI goes down? What if my CRM goes down? What if I lose my email? What if I lose, all of those things need to be thought about really through to make the business resilient. And I think the biggest way to kind of adapt is kind of, as I say, your business has to be resilient. You have to be thinking about what are the changes coming, and there's lots of businesses that are kind of probably under fire in terms of what AI can do, where they're going to lose a lot of business. So how are we going to adapt? What is it we're going to do? What is it we're going to offer differently? What is it we can do? Whether, because, things will, there will be jobs that people will have AI do, right? And, we can't sit here and say that's not going to happen. That is going to happen. And it's thinking about the things, whatever your business does, is AI a threat to our business, and how do we adapt and change, and where do we move to become that, because actually if you don't adapt and change, then you will become extinct. The biggest one, if you think about it, is Nokia, the biggest phone manufacturer in the world, disappeared, right? They didn't adapt, they didn't change, they didn't think about how do we get to there. And if you'd have said to someone in the early 2000s, when everyone's running around playing Snake on their 3310s, in 10 years' time, this company won't exist, people would have said you're crazy, right? So that is why it's really important to adapt, to be thinking about things, learning about things, having policies in place, but also about our critical thinking. That is really important as well, because that about where your business is going. And that's probably the biggest thing I can say. You have to be thinking, right, where is the market now? What are the things that are happening? What could affect my organization and my business? And what is it we can do, or how can we become something different, or adapt it, or, offer something different so that we stay relevant, right? So going back to that Nokia thing, they thought that, touch screens were not going to be a thing, right?
Yeah.
And how wrong were they, because we become confident and think that we can't move forward. So I think it is really important to be kind of looking at what is happening, with AI and with all these different tools that you can have, and where your business is, what is it we offer, and how can we adapt and change and pivot. And speak to people, speak to business coaches, speak to mentors, speak to resilience coaches about, like you, about risk. Speak to people, go out there and actually get people who can actually think about it critically and think actually and challenge you on it, because that is the best thing that you can do. And I think that would be my thing about adapting. You've just got to always keep your teams close, your mentors close, whoever it is close, have those conversations all the time and try to be thinking those 2 steps ahead.
I think that's really, really a good way to frame that, because, again, Nokia is a really good example, and there's lots of other examples. The other ones that come to mind are the likes of Blockbuster and BlackBerry as well, in that same kind of vein. And those were organizations that weren't able, or did not see the opportunities that were coming, and they sort of did not I guess to me, AI, like a lot of those kind of organizations that came in, Apple is a really good example of it, is that, disruptors that come into the market and that change the face of a market. And AI is exactly that. It's come in and it's changed the face of how people work. And I think that's it's good to understand that. But when you're thinking about resilience, it's not about just, okay, how do we make that work with us? It's about how you then grow forward. And it's not just about the ones that are starting to just completely utilize AI and move fastest. This will be about the ones that are going to thrive are the ones that actually are going to move in a smarter way and think about AI as a good way of doing it.
And it's not thinking about the actual product. If you look at Apple, so they have, like you referenced them, their whole mission is to bring the best user experience to the people, not necessarily the best at doing everything, but the best user experience, the best, right? So that is how, obviously with, the iPhone, it was the screen, those the best user experience. And it's kind of thinking about in that way, what is my mission? What is it? Right. And maybe Nokia, I don't know, they were probably thinking, well, this is the phone. People love us, right? Everybody loves to play Snake.
They've been the market leader. They have been for a long time.
And you can sit on your laurels and not
with
think,
complacency. Yeah.
You have to do something different to survive.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's a good lesson for us all to be thinking about in terms of adapt. Before we close up our conversation today, Gary, is there the one thing I always end on with every guest is, have you got any, I suppose, closing thoughts, something that people can hold on to and anchor on as they think about the pressure they're feeling about adopting AI in their organizations?
Yeah, two key things is kind of keep your thinking and think about where you want to go, the things you want to do. Keep talking to people, keep talking to humans. Don't go down that thing of AI. The second thing is, think about what is the data that we're giving AI. Think about those things, the protections, the data protection, all of that. So you're not in a situation 2 years down the line where suddenly, you realize you breached all of these things and you're in a lot of hot water. So kind of thinking about what is it, we're doing, where do we want to go, keep talking to humans and be careful about all the things that you do with AI. But the big thing is you've got to kind of use it and adapt it and think about it, how you can use it to kind of enhance, not replace.
Absolutely. Yeah. Kind of being prepared, not being afraid as well, which I think is really good. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Gary. Where can people find out a bit more about you and follow your work?
Yeah, so you can follow us at gosucceed.co.uk. And we're also on all the channels on LinkedIn at Go Succeed Business Coaching and Instagram at Go Succeed Coaching. Yeah. And we also have our own podcast as well called Selling Out. So that's available on all those podcast channels. So you can go and listen to that. And that's where we talk to LGBTQ leaders and founders about their journey in business.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. And thank you for joining us today on The Prepared Leader. If this episode has made you think differently about how your organization is approaching AI, we'd love to hear about it. And if you found it valuable, please do share with a fellow leader who needs it. Remember, AI isn't the disruption you need to fear. Unpreparedness is. Until next time, stay ready and lead with confidence.